Welcome to Health and Harmony Beyond the Teeth, where we dive into all subjects that will help you become healthier and happier. As a dentist, I believe dentistry is more than just teeth, so I created this show to focus on overall health. We will hear from leading experts about eating better, exercising better, breathing better, and sleeping better. We want to help you create harmony in your life so you can live your life to the fullest. We want you to thrive. Hello, welcome to Health and Harmony Beyond the Teeth. I'm Dr. Stewart, your host. You know, I love to eat, I talk a lot, and I love to sleep. And I like to, when I go through those times where I am in shape, which is not right now, unfortunately, I'm just getting over an illness, but going to get back in shape. But I love to run, and when you run, you breathe. You have to breathe. So what do all these things have in common? Breathing, eating, talking. Well, the tongue is a big part of that. The tongue is also a major player in the development of our upper jaw and lower jaw and our airway. Think of it, how we breathe. We breathe through our nose or our mouth. Primarily breathing should come through the nose. The mouth is just a secondary breathing apparatus, but it goes down behind the soft palate, behind the tongue, and into our lungs. So any restriction in that airway from the nostrils down below the epiglottis, which is about right here, can cause serious health issues. If our tongue does not perform the way that it's supposed to perform from an early stage, from an infant stage, by the way, I'm a proud grandfather of now a little over 2 weeks. And the first thing that my wife, Dr. Adriana Corridor Stewart, did when we saw our new grandson was we checked his tongue for a tongue tie, because we want that kid to be nursing with that and using his tongue to develop his jaws, because we know if his jaws develop correctly, he'll have minimal, if any, dental issues. He'll have a great airway. He'll have an optimally aesthetic face, and his immune system will be out of this world. That's all tied into how the tongue helps the jaws develop. It's crucial. So not everybody listening to this podcast is an infant. I'm afraid that probably no infants are listening to this podcast. The only ones listening to it are adults, and maybe their parents, maybe their grandparents. But we're going to talk about how important the tongue is today. And one of the important parts of a healthy tongue, and a tongue doing what it's supposed to do in a developed child or in an adult, is having the tonal response that a tongue should have to help us speak better, to help us breathe better, to help us eat better. We have our resident myofunctional therapist, Kimberly, with us today, who's going to help us understand a little bit about the importance of the tongue and what she does in her profession to help that. So, Kimberly, again, welcome to our podcast, and we're just thrilled to have you on again, as usual.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So, were you doing tongue exercises to keep your tongue toned up while I was talking, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me, Kimberly, a lot of people, we're talking about a subject that, though, a lot of people are just completely unaware. But when we start relating symptoms, maybe these unsolvable symptoms that they have or their children have, to their tongue and to other, the development of their face, there may be some aha moments. What are some things that people can look for in themselves or in their children that might point towards, hey, this person or myself, maybe I should be checked out to see if I have a tongue tie? Why that's important?
Good question. There are some real subtle signs of a tongue tie, and there's some real overt ones. So when someone's talking, if you consistently see their tongue go between their teeth or out, they probably have a tongue tie, because the tongue, that frenum underneath, is pulling it so tight that it pulls it back and then it goes forward. If they're a really messy eater, when they're eating, you see a lot of facial compensations, or maybe they smack, or they're really a noisy eater, messy eater. Maybe they don't notice when things are on their face. That's another sign or symptom that they might have a tongue tie. If they have to reach with their finger in to clean out the food in the sides of their cheek there because they can't get their tongue over there to clean it out, that's another red flag. Maybe if they can't get food off their palate, if they can't get their tongue up there and rake it off, that's another sign or symptom that there's probably a tongue tie. Speech errors. If they have what their S's and their Z's sound slushy, or it sounds like a lisp, or if they can't make those R sounds. We've all heard there's those kids who you can understand them, but it just takes a little bit more effort. When they're telling you that joke, you want to get it, you want to laugh, but you really didn't understand it because they can't make their R's, and everybody has to listen just a little bit harder. A lot of times those are kids with the posterior tongue tie. Some other signs and symptoms I look for is, do they shift their jaw a lot? Is their jaw moving all around? They should be able to move their tongue without moving their jaw. So if there's poor jaw stability, that's usually another sign or symptom that we're going to delve into and look at. That's probably why they're shifting that jaw. So if they don't have jaw stability, they're not going to be a good eater. They're not going to chew their food like they need to, and they're not going to digest it. That's going to cause constipation. There's going to be some reflux issues. There's a lot of things that go along with that.
So a couple of podcasts ago, we were talking about, we briefly covered tongue ties. Most people think a tongue tie is like when the tip of your tongue is tethered and you literally can't get it out of your mouth. That most people think of that type of tongue tie, when in fact there are very few people that actually have that. What we're talking about for the most part here, Kimberly, is what we call a posterior tongue tie, and that doesn't mean in the back of your throat, but if everybody lifts their tongue up, they have a what we call a frenum, or an attachment. If that attachment a little bit deeper in is restricting the movement of the tongue, that can have a negative effect on the jaws, on eating, hyperactive gag reflex, choking, head and neck pain, TMJ pain. So when we're talking about tongue tie, for the most part, it's not the obvious. Obviously when the tip of the tongue is tied, that's something that's like having a sixth finger. That probably shouldn't be there. But the posterior tongue tie is something that really goes unnoticed by a lot of people because they just don't know. But there's more and more dental practitioners and ENTs trying to identify that. So how would, I know one time, Kimberly, you told me that if one thing that you can test is you can eat like maybe a spoonful of cereal and swallow it and then stick your tongue out. If your tongue is functioning and your lips and cheeks are functioning properly, if you eat a bolus of food and swallow it and stick your tongue out, what should we see?
After you swallow, your tongue should be clean. There shouldn't be a scattered food all over it. So a lot of times a patient with a posterior tongue tie, I'll have them take a bite, chew, swallow it, and then show me their tongue. And they'll stick out their tongue and they're shocked that there's a lot of food all over their tongue. They're the patients who have to wash their food down. But they don't know it's wrong, or they don't know there's a problem because that's always been what they've dealt with. You shouldn't have to wash your food down. You should be able to chew it, gather it into a bolus, swallow it, and then your tongue be clean afterwards. But those patients who have a posterior tongue tie, they're not able to do that. Or a lot of times they don't even chew their food well because it's hard for them to lateralize their tongue and gather up that bolus, to suction it up and then swallow it.
It's interesting that you say that. I was when I was just a few years out of dental school, I was in Germany for about 3 weeks. we would go to different people's houses and eat, and a lot of the times there would not be any water or, beer or anything to drink with the meal. And these were mainly older generation peoples, that we were seeing at that time, in their 60s and 70s. And they were raised that you didn't really have a drink with your meal. I mean, if you had a glass of wine or something like that, but you weren't washing things down with water. And I always thought that was kind of strange, but these people ate very healthy and they lived very long lives. And I think maybe just intuitively they knew that, or, why would you have to drink when you eat if you're chewing properly and your tongue's working properly? I always thought that was interesting. And until I started delving into this part of craniofacial development and the oral systems, finally a light bulb went on, and I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe that's why. They didn't know it, but their tongues were working properly. So someone that's having to take a sip of water after every bite, they most likely probably have a tongue that's not functioning the right way, correct?
Absolutely. Yep. Or if they're a patient who can't swallow pills or have a significant difficulty swallowing pills, it's probably because there's a posterior tongue tie there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead.
How about people that, like when at a party, they're laughing a lot, their face gets really tired? I mean, we don't think of the tongue being a part of that, but it really is. The tongue is part of all that expressive nature that we have. And you should be able to go to a party and laugh and enjoy yourself and smile, and not your face should not get fatigued.
Absolutely. Or you shouldn't get tripped up in a conversation over, you shouldn't get tripped up over a conversation or get hung up on certain words. And oftentimes I'll explain it to a patient. I'm like, you can talk and you can eat and you can drink just fine. Okay. But it's hard for you. And I give them an analogy. I'm like, if I tied your shoes together and asked you to run down to the end of the street, you could do it. It wouldn't be pretty. It wouldn't be your best time, but you could do it. And that's what's happening right now. You're functioning, you're eating and you're drinking and you're sleeping, but you're compensating and you're not doing it all to the best of your ability. And it's because they have a posterior tongue tie. And once I break it down and explain it to them that way, it's fun because they have an aha moment and they understand, oh, I do have a posterior tongue tie, and I show it to them. Patients who can't suck their tongue up easily to the roof of their mouth, that's the patient who has a posterior tongue tie. A lot of times the whole floor of their mouth is going to be coming up. They're going to compensate and give me, I call it an incredible Hulk neck, just using all these muscles here. You shouldn't have to compensate to do that. Shouldn't have that incredible Hulk neck. They should just be able to suction up easily.
Can you demonstrate the palatal suction?
Sure.
So our patients can see what you're talking about?
Absolutely. So you just suck your entire tongue up to your palate. Sometimes if the patients can't do it, we'll click slowly and freeze it up there, but it looks like this.
So your tongue is covering your palate and it's suctioning up there. And what's your goal? That's just one of the things that you look for, but ultimately what's your goal with a patient when you've trained them and they're ready to have that tongue tie released, they come to me for the release. What is your goal? I know what my goal, I like to see them being able to hold that for 45 seconds, a minute and a half. The longer they can hold it, the better.
Sure. I'm super strict because by the time they get in your chair, I want them to be able to do it. And so what we work on in therapy is I want them to do it for a minute, close for 10 seconds, open up and do it for a second minute, and close for 10 seconds and go up for a third minute. And I explain it to them because I was in your chair and I know what it feels like. I tell them it's hard to suck a numb tongue up. But if we've worked really hard before the release and that muscle memory is there, then they're able to suck it up and hold that suction for you so that you can do what you need to do and they can get an optimal release. And then it also helps post procedure. They're not afraid to suck it up and do it when they might be thinking, oh, this is going to be a little uncomfortable. It's going to hurt. They're already very familiar with what it feels like. And I feel like we have good success afterwards because we work so hard on the front end.
And you brought up a great point. We do a functional tongue release, meaning that the patient they're awake, they're numb, their tongue is numb, but they're going into that functional suction that you just saw Kimberly do. And we do the surgery while they're doing that, because we then can see the difference during the surgery itself. And the patient can actually feel the difference. They don't feel the tongue release, but they can feel the release into their neck and their shoulders and down their body. And they have endorphin release. Sometimes they get very emotional and they start crying, but they're crying, happy tears, not sad tears. So that's another reason that I won't do a tongue release until they've gone and seen Kimberly and are at that point where they can hold for 60 seconds, rest for 10 seconds, hold for 60 seconds, rest for 10 and 60 more, because that is so critical to us doing a good functional tongue release. So Kimberly, before we end our podcast, I want you to, what are symptoms that you see your patients have, like list, maybe the top 3 to 5 symptoms they have, that after they've gone through myofunctional therapy and had the release done, the difference in how they felt before, how they felt afterwards?
I hear a lot of my patients tell me that they don't have as much tension in their neck and in their shoulders. They are not having recurrent headaches. They're able to chew their food easier and they don't fatigue during a meal. A lot of times these patients, there's foods that they've just avoided because they knew it was hard for them to chew. So they kind of gravitated towards a more processed diet or soft diet, whereas after their release, they're able to chew without fatiguing. They're able to have a longer conversation and not get tripped up on their words. They're also my patients who sleep better. I never tell them, I never guarantee these things are going to happen. I don't want to put ideas into their mind or put words into their mouth. But afterwards, at about 6 to 8 weeks after the release, we go back over their evaluation again, and all of their signs and symptoms and all their complaints that they talked about before, we address them again at that point. And it is so much fun to see, oh, I'm not drooling at night anymore. I'm not clenching and grinding my teeth. I'm not snoring. So those are some of the big things that I see. And also speech intelligibility improves significantly. So.
Yeah, it really is amazing that something, I don't want to simplify it because it's not simple, but it is. But that muscle that we call the tongue, it's the strongest muscle in the body for its size. The effect that can have on, our entire life. The way that we feel, the tension, the headaches, and then that just leads into how we feel on a daily basis. And having that released, it's not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve all the problems, but it's a major factor in a lot of patients that have breathing problems, postural problems, TMJ issues, head, facial pain, neck pain. If there are other things to do that for those issues, that there are other treatments that might need to be done, but if the tongue is ignored, then we're never going to have complete healing. We're never going to be as optimal as we can. So it's a huge part of this. It's a huge part of our life. We speak, we eat, we sleep, we breathe. The tongue's a huge part of that. And people like Kimberly, you guys are a major player in helping us on the medical side, getting these patients comfortable and healthy. So my hat is off to you, Kimberly, and I thank you for all that you do for our patients and for other doctors' patients. It really is amazing. So any parting words for our guests?
I would say pay attention to those symptoms. Watch your family members, watch them sleep, watch them eat. Follow your gut. If you're seeing some of those signs and symptoms that we've talked about today, reach out to Dr. Stewart, reach out, and let's get to the root cause of it. because you don't want to compensate. You don't want your little one to compensate his whole life. And we all have lots of years ahead of us, and we want them to be as healthy as possible. And so the tongue is just one part of it. We want to make sure that you're breathing, you're sleeping, you're eating, and you're living your life to the fullest.
And Kimberly, for our audience members that might not be here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, they may be on the other side of the country, is there like a national organization they could look up maybe to find a myofunctional therapist in their area, or a doctor in their area that specializes in this like we do?
Absolutely. They can look up the International Association of Oral-Facial Myofunctional Therapy. And on there, you'll see every therapist that's a certified oral-facial myofunctional therapist. And we have some in almost every state by now. I think there's about 370, 380 of us in the nation right now. But there's a good directory there. And if there's not someone right there, you can reach out to Dr. Stewart or me, and I can put you in touch with somebody in your area. Great.
Well, Kimberly, thank you so much for being on. We'll have you on again real soon. This has been part 3 of a 3-part series on oral myofunctional therapy, and it's important to our overall health. So, Kimberly, thank you so much. We will see you next time.
All right.
And
thank you.
For our next segment, as we end every one of our podcasts with Health Essentials with Landis, our hygienist and essential oil specialist at our office, the Stewart Center for Optimal Health. We're a big believer in healthy habits and healthy products from the earth that can help our lives better. Essential oils are just that. So Landis, I'm going to throw it over to you for your segment. What oils do you have for us today, and what are we going to learn?
Thanks, Dr. Stewart. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about a product called Ningxia Red. Yes, it's liquid. It's actually a puree of multiple fruits and multiple berries. There are some essential oils in here that are citrus-based, such as orange, lemon, yuzu. So those oils are in here as well. Ningxia Red is an amazing product. You may be wondering, where did that name come from? Well, Ningxia, Ningxia, is actually a province in China. It is a very mountainous province, and it has fruit that grows on trees up high on that. And so it has a less amount of oxygen that it uses in order to grow. Have you ever heard of goji berries? Goji berries are the same thing as wolfberries, and that's the name that Young Living talks about and uses, is wolfberries. These have been proven to be highly antioxidant based. Now, we hear a lot about antioxidants today. We hear about superfoods, right? Berries are superfoods, so that includes wolfberries, but pomegranates, that's all of a sudden we see this proliferation of pomegranates everywhere. All of these things, what do? When you have something that comes against you in the environment, or something that you've either taken in or even inhaled, such as gasoline, you're pumping your car full of gasoline and you inhale, you're taking in a toxin. That right there can obviously cause you and your body to struggle. And there's all sorts of different things that act as toxins to our body. But an antioxidant, what it does is it goes and it fights something that's created called a free radical. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with, you cut an apple and you leave it sitting and it starts to brown. That is the process of oxidation. An antioxidant keeps that from happening. What do we usually use for that? Some type of citrus. Let's think about our avocados. Lime juice, almost always, for those of us who are in Texas and love our Mexican food, that is going to act as an antioxidant. Remember the oils that I said that were in this particular blend here, this puree? Yes, they're very, very highly antioxidant. I want to give you a tiny lesson on the ORAC scale. So the ORAC scale is what we use to measure the number of antioxidants. When we talk about prunes, it's 57. When we're talking about anything that's all of our fruits and things like that, they range anywhere from the low 30s to the high 50s. This puree measures 303. 303. So it is very highly oxidative. If I'm not feeling well, I'm going to drink at least 2 ounces of this a day. On an everyday average basis, I'm going to drink 1 ounce. Again, it's a puree. So you're also getting the benefits of the peels and of the fibers of the fruit that you're able to take in, which of course is where the majority of the nutrients are. So this has become a part of my entire family's everyday life. It is something that we use to boost our immune systems, to safeguard when we're not feeling well or we're not feeling, quite up to the wellness line. We will increase our dosages of this. So I have a friend that actually puts her name on it, and she goes throughout the day and she's able to kick it back and chug it because it's something that they have been able to do and to be able to afford. It has been a wonderful, wonderful blessing for our family. It has so many benefits, including overall health, but it supports proper eye health. It supports so many things, proper skin, respiratory. It's able to support your digestive system. It's a great product to look into. If you'd like more information about it, I'm going to recommend that you go to a microsite, and it's it is Ningxia, Ningxia red.com. Ningxiared.com. Look at that microsite. You get all sorts of information, or you can give me a call or send me an email. I would love to chat with you. Okay, Dr. Stewart, it's back to you.
Thank you, Landis. And as usual, great information. We've enjoyed having you today. This is Dr. Hal Stewart with Health and Harmony Beyond the Teeth. Stay tuned for our next podcast next week. In the meantime, live healthy, live happy, and go do something nice for somebody today.